The call came at 6:47 inches the morning, while I was still in my scrubs from the overnight shift and running on 3 hours of sleep in my car. I'd pulled into the driveway of my mother's house, my house now, technically, though I hadn't let myself say that out loud yet, and I was halfway through a cold coffee when my phone buzzed against my thigh. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I'm glad I didn't. Is this Claire Harmon? A man's voice. Formal. The kind that doesn't warm up before it delivers news. Yes, I said. My name is Gerald Fitch. I'm an attorney representing your sister in the matter of the estate of Donna Harmon. He paused, just long enough to let the name settle. I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that we've filed a petition with the probate court contesting the current distribution order. A new will has been submitted for authentication. I sat very still. The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. What new will? I said. Not a question. A correction. A handwritten will dated approximately 6 weeks before your mother's passing, he said. It supersedes the typed document currently on record. I looked through my windshield at the house. The same white siding my father had painted the summer before he left. The rose bushes my mother replanted every spring, even the years her hands hurt too much to grip the trowel properly. My name was already on the deed. The probate judge had signed the distribution order 11 weeks ago. I'd done everything right. I'd waited. I'd been patient. I'd let the process work the way it was supposed to. Where did this will come from? I asked. Your sister provided it, Mr. Fitch said. And there it was. I didn't ask why. I already knew why. My sister had been standing in my mother's kitchen the week of the funeral, looking at the countertops and the bay window and the yard, the way someone looks at something they've already decided belongs to them. She'd said, very quietly, that it wasn't fair, that she was the one who lived closest, that she was the one who came by most, that my mother had always intended for the house to stay within easy reach of the grandchildren. I'd said, calmly, that the will was clear. She hadn't spoken to me since. Mr. Fitch, I said, I'd like a copy of this will. It's a public filing now, he replied. You can obtain it from the probate court. I ended the call, set the coffee on the dashboard, and sat there for 30 seconds. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I'd learned a long time ago, working 12-hour overnight shifts in a cardiac unit, that panic is a luxury you can only afford when nothing depends on you. Something depended on me. The house depended on me. My mother's actual wishes depended on me. I drove to the probate court before it officially opened and waited on the steps until the doors unlocked. The clerk at the filing window was efficient and unreadable. I gave her the estate case number from memory and asked for the newly filed petition and the document submitted as the contested will. She printed them and slid the pages through the slot without ceremony. I read the will standing at the counter. It was 2 pages, handwritten, dated 6 weeks before my mother died, her name at the top in looping cursive. A statement that she'd reconsidered the disposition of the family home. A line saying she wished for the property to pass to my sister instead. And at the bottom, 2 witness signatures. I read the witness names slowly. The first was a woman named Patricia Good. The second was a man named Thomas Weller. I recognized Patricia Good. Patricia Good had been my mother's neighbor for 22 years. She'd brought soup during my mother's first round of chemo. She'd sat with her on the porch on summer evenings when neither of them could sleep. My mother had spoken of her the way you speak of someone who became family through proximity and time rather than paperwork. Patricia Good had also passed away 8 months before this will was supposedly signed. I stood at that counter with the papers in my hands and felt something in my chest go very cold and very clear. I didn't make a scene. I didn't go back to the window and announce what I'd found. I took my copies, folded them carefully, and walked to the nearest bench in the hallway. Then I sat down and thought through exactly what I was holding. A forged will required a forged witness. A forged witness was either someone paid to lie or someone whose name had been borrowed without their knowledge. Patricia Good couldn't lie. She couldn't testify. She couldn't deny anything. She was gone, which meant my sister had calculated that a dead woman was the safest kind of witness. I pulled out my phone and searched Patricia Good's obituary. It came up on the 3rd result, published in the local paper 8 months and 12 days before the date on the will. Survived by a son, a daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Services held at Riverside Methodist. A woman who spent her last years gardening and baking and sitting on the porch with my mother. My sister had signed her name to a lie and put a dead woman's name underneath it as protection. I called an attorney before I left the courthouse parking lot. Not a friend, not a referral I'd half remembered. I called the best probate litigation attorney in the county. A woman named Susan Park, whose name I'd kept in my phone for 2 years because my mother's first estate attorney had mentioned her once and said, quietly, If you ever need someone who doesn't flinch, call her. Susan Park answered her own phone. I told her what I had in 3 sentences. Send me the documents, she said. Don't go home yet. Don't contact your sister. And don't touch anything in that house until I call you back. I didn't go home. I drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse and sat at a corner table and started building the record. I sent Susan the copies I'd made. Then I opened my mother's online obituary and found Patricia Good mentioned by name in the comments section. 3 separate people had written about her, had tagged her in connection to my mother, had marked the specific month she'd passed. Timestamped. The kind of thing that doesn't disappear. Then I went back further. I logged into the county recorder's office public portal and pulled the death certificate filing date for Patricia Good. It was dated and certified, 8 months before the signature on my sister's will. By the time Susan called me back 40 minutes later, I had a folder of screenshots, a timeline, and the beginning of a very clean argument. The second witness, Susan said immediately, before I could speak. Who is Thomas Weller? I don't know him, I said. Find out. If he's alive, he either signed this willingly or his name was used without consent. Either way, we need to know. I searched the name while Susan spoke. Thomas Weller, same zip code as my mother's neighborhood. LinkedIn profile, retired, mid-60s, had lived in the area for over 30 years. Not dead, possibly a real person my sister had recruited, or possibly someone whose name she'd borrowed the same way she'd borrowed Patricia Good's. If he didn't sign, I said, there's no valid witness. One valid witness on a holographic will isn't enough in this state anyway, Susan said. But if neither witness can authenticate their signature, the will doesn't survive a basic credibility challenge. She paused. I'm going to file a response today. I need you to come into the office this afternoon. Before I left the coffee shop, I did one more thing. I went back to the probate court portal and requested the full submission record for my sister's petition, the date it was filed, the time, the name of the attorney of record. Then I printed the original distribution order that had already been signed and certified, the one with my name on it, the one that had been in effect for 11 weeks. My sister hadn't just filed a competing claim. She'd waited until the estate was settled, until my guard was down, until I'd stopped watching. Then she'd filed a document that, if no one looked carefully, would reopen everything and hand her what she wanted. At Susan's office, I laid everything on the conference table in order. Susan looked at the will, then at the obituary printout, then at the death certificate date. Her expression didn't change dramatically, but her pen stopped moving for just a moment. A dead witness, she said. 8 months before the signing date, I confirmed. Susan set her pen down. Your sister either didn't know Patricia Good was gone, which seems unlikely if they were neighbors for decades, or she knew and counted on no one checking. She counted on me being too grieving and too tired to look, I said. Susan looked at me. Were you? I'm a night shift nurse, I said. I stopped being too tired to look a long time ago. She filed the response that afternoon. A motion to deny authentication of the contested will on grounds of facial invalidity, one witness deceased prior to execution, and a request for an evidentiary hearing to examine the second witness. The court set a date 10 days out. My sister called me the evening before the hearing. I was in my kitchen, which still smelled faintly like my mother's hand lotion even after all these weeks, and my phone buzzed with her name on the screen. I let it ring once. Then I answered. You're going to embarrass yourself, my sister said. Her voice had the particular quality of someone who has rehearsed the conversation and is now running the script regardless of what the other person says. I'm going to court, I said. That attorney is costing you money you don't have. That's my problem to manage. She paused. Then her voice changed, went softer and more practiced. Claire, Mom wanted this. She told me. She said the house should stay close, should be where the kids could come on weekends. You don't even live here full time. You work nights. What are you even going to do with it? I let her finish. She put my name on the will, I said. The one a notarized attorney drafted and witnessed while she was coherent and had capacity. She had 2 years to change it. She didn't. That will is outdated, my sister said. Then produce the one that isn't, I said. In court. Tomorrow. She hung up. I didn't sleep particularly well, but I slept. Because exhaustion wins eventually, and I needed to be functional. I set my alarm for 5:30, laid out my clothes, put all my documents into a single accordion folder in a specific order, and went to bed. The next morning, I was at the courthouse before my sister's attorney. The probate courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, wood-paneled and slightly dim, with a judge's bench that looked like it had been there since before either of us was born. A handful of other cases were scheduled before ours. I sat in the back and watched the proceedings until the bailiff called the estate name. My sister came in through the side door with her husband and Mr. Fitch. She was dressed carefully, soft colors, the kind of outfit that reads as reasonable. She didn't look at me until she had to. My sister's husband gave me a brief look as they settled at the table. Not hostile, apologetic, almost, which told me he knew what was on that will and had agreed to it anyway. Judge Miriam Calloway took the bench with the efficiency of someone who had seen every version of family disputes and had stopped being surprised. She reviewed the filings without expression, then looked up. "We're here on the petition to authenticate a contested holographic will and challenge the current distribution order," she said. "Miss Park, you represent the current heir of record?" "I do, Your Honor," Susan said. "Mr. Fitch, you represent the petitioner?" "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Calloway looked at the contested will. "Before we proceed to testimony, I want to address the witness issue raised in the response filing." She turned to Mr. Fitch. "You submitted this document with 2 witness signatures. The respondent has submitted evidence that one of those witnesses, Patricia Good, passed away 8 months before the date on this will. Do you have a response to that?" Mr. Fitch stood. He was polished, careful, the kind of attorney who chooses words the way a chess player chooses moves. "Your Honor, we acknowledge there appears to be a discrepancy regarding Miss Good's status at the time of signing. We believe the date on the will may reflect when your client wrote the document, not necessarily when the witness is signed." Judge Calloway looked at him the way you look at someone who has just tried to sell you something with missing parts. "You're suggesting the witness is signed on a different date than the document itself." "It's possible, Your Honor. Is there anything in the document to support that?" Mr. Fitch hesitated. "Not explicitly." Judge Calloway set the will down. "So your position is that your client's deceased mother wrote a will, and the witnesses may have signed it at some unspecified other time, but there's no notation of that anywhere on the document. We believe the intent is clear, Your Honor." Judge Calloway turned to the second witness issue. "Thomas Weller," she said. "Was he subpoenaed?" Susan stood. "He was, Your Honor. He's present in the hall." The bailiff brought Thomas Weller in. He was in his mid-60s, gray at the temples, wearing a button-down shirt and the expression of a man who had not planned on being in a courtroom today and was not happy about it. He took the stand, was sworn in, and looked at the judge without flinching. "Mr. Weller," Judge Calloway said, "did you witness Donna Harmon sign a handwritten will approximately 6 weeks before her death?" Thomas Weller looked at the document the clerk held up. He studied it for a moment. "No," he said. "The courtroom didn't explode. It just got very quiet." "You did not witness this document," the judge repeated. "I never met Donna Harmon," Thomas Weller said. "I've lived 2 streets over for 30 years, but I never had any dealings with her. I don't know how my name got on that paper." Judge Calloway looked at my sister. My sister's face had gone through several changes in the last 10 seconds. It had started at composed, moved through surprise, tried to land on concerned, and hadn't quite gotten there. Her husband was looking at the table. Mr. Fitch stood. "Your Honor, there may be a misunderstanding." "Sit down," Judge Calloway said. She turned to Susan. "Counsel, you may proceed." Susan stood and addressed Thomas Weller directly. "Mr. Weller, have you ever signed any document related to Donna Harmon's estate or property?" "No," he said. "Never." "Is that your signature on the document?" He looked again. "No, that's not how I signed my name." Susan turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we have a deceased witness whose name was used 8 months after her death and a living witness who denies any knowledge of the document or the signature attributed to him. We're asking the court to deny authentication and refer this matter for investigation of fraud on the court." Mr. Fitch was on his feet. "Your Honor, this is an accusation without—" "It's an observation," Susan said, voice level. "The document has no valid witnesses. Under state law, it cannot be authenticated." "That's before we even address the content." Judge Calloway held up her hand. Both attorneys stopped. She looked at the will for a long moment. Then she looked at my sister. "Miss Barrett," she said, using my sister's married name, "did you prepare this document or arrange for its preparation?" My sister's attorney was up instantly. "Your Honor, I'd advise my client not to answer. I'm not asking in a criminal capacity," Judge Calloway said, "and your client can decline to answer if she chooses, but her silence will be noted in this record." She looked at my sister again. "Did you prepare this document?" My sister looked at her husband. He was staring at the table. She looked at her attorney. Mr. Fitch gave a very small shake of his head. My sister said nothing. The silence lasted about 4 seconds. Judge Calloway nodded once, the way you nod when something confirms what you already suspected. The petition to authenticate the contested will is denied, she said. The existing distribution order remains in effect. The property transfer to the current heir of record stands. She set the document down. I'm referring this matter to the county prosecutor's office for review of potential fraud on the court, including the submission of a document bearing signatures that cannot be authenticated and one signature attributed to a person deceased prior to the purported signing date. She paused. Mr. Fitch, you may want to review your obligations under the rules of professional conduct regarding how this document came into your possession. Mr. Fitch looked like a man who had just realized he'd been handed something that had burned the person who gave it to him. Court is adjourned, Judge Calloway said. The gavel came down and I exhaled through my nose, quietly, the way you exhale after a long shift, when the last critical patient has stabilized, and you finally allow yourself to believe the night is going to end without crisis. My sister left quickly, her husband's hand on her back. She didn't look at me in the hallway. Not because she was angry, because she couldn't look at what she'd chosen to do, and also look at me at the same time. Those two things wouldn't fit in the same field of vision. Mr. Fitch was already on his phone at the end of the corridor, voice low, walking fast. Thomas Weller paused beside me on his way out. He was shaking his head slightly. I'm sorry you went through this, he said. Your mother sounds like she was a good woman. She was, I said. Thank you for coming. He nodded once and left. Outside the courthouse, Susan handed me a copy of the court's order before she even said anything else. Warm from the printer. Signed. Official. The kind of paper that closes doors people tried to leave open. What happens now? I asked. The referral goes to the prosecutor, Susan said. Whether they pursue it depends on their caseload and what the investigation turns up. But the estate is settled. The house is yours. Your sister can't refile this. Can she try something else? Susan looked at me plainly. People who do this kind of thing usually have a limit they hit when the consequences become real. She's at that limit now. She paused. But you should record the court's order with the county recorder today, attached to your deed. It puts the attempted challenge on public record and it closes any title gap if you ever sell. I drove to the recorder's office before lunch. The clerk there processed the attachment without drama, stamped it, and handed me a certified copy of the updated record. My name on the deed. The distribution order. And now the court's denial of the challenge, all attached to the same parcel number, all time-stamped and permanent. On my way to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. 4 words. I hope you're happy. I looked at it for a moment. I thought about responding. Then I put the phone in my bag and drove home. My mother's house looked the same as it always had. The rose bushes were starting to come back. The early ones along the south fence. The ones she'd planted the year I was born. The porch light was on because I'd left it on 3 days ago and hadn't been back to turn it off. The key still fit the lock the same way it had when I was 16. I went inside and stood in the kitchen for a while. The hand lotion smell was fainter now. In a few more weeks, it would be gone entirely, and the house would start to smell like me instead. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I thought about it for a while. In the weeks that followed, the prosecutor's office sent a letter requesting documents. I provided everything Susan had already compiled, plus my own additions: the public death record for Patricia Good, the court transcript from the hearing, Thomas Weller's sworn statement. They sent an investigator to speak with Mr. Fitch. My brother-in-law called me once. He said my sister was sorry, that she hadn't thought it through, that she'd convinced herself Mom had said certain things, and that turned into believing she had the right to make those things official. He said it the way people say things when they're explaining without apologizing, framing without responsibility. I listened until he was finished. I'm glad you called, I said. I want you to know I'm not trying to destroy her, but I'm not going to pretend the will was real or that what she did was a misunderstanding. He was quiet. The house is mine, I said. That's where it ends, as long as nothing else happens. He said okay. He sounded tired. I believed he meant it. My sister never called. I'm not waiting for her to. I stopped waiting for apologies from people who can't separate what they want from what they're owed a long time ago. My mother taught me that, actually, though not intentionally. She spent years managing my sister's expectations and smoothing over the places where my sister's sense of entitlement rubbed against reality. She did it out of love. She did it because it was easier than the alternative. And then she died and left a clear, legal, properly witnessed will, and my sister decided that wasn't the version of the story she wanted. The rose bushes are fully back now. I've been cutting them back the way my mother showed me, just above the outward-facing bud, so the new growth opens toward the light. I don't have my mother's patience for it, but I'm learning. I kept the bay window bare like she did. In the mornings, before a shift, I sit there with coffee and watch the street come to life. And sometimes I think about all the documents in a folder in the cabinet by the front door, the deed, the distribution order, the court denial, the certified recorder's attachment, and I think about how much of life turns out to be about paperwork. Not because paperwork is more important than people, but because paperwork is what's left when people stop being honest with each other. My mother knew who she wanted to have this house. She said it clearly, in writing, in front of witnesses, with an attorney present. That should have been enough. It almost wasn't, because my sister bet on me being too soft, too sad, too overwhelmed to read the dates carefully. She was wrong about me. If someone in your family has ever tried to rewrite a story that was already finished and witnessed and filed, you know exactly what it costs to hold that line. Not in money. In the decision? Made quietly, at 7 a.m. in a parking lot in your day-old scrubs, to be the person who looks carefully at every page before they sign anything and reads every name before they believe it. Leave me a comment if you've been there. Tell me how it ended. And if you want more stories where the record turns out to be the most powerful thing in the room, hit like, and I'll see you in the next one.